Jared Kirkwood, how are you, mate?
I'm good, Mike. I'm great. Good to be here.
Yeah. So we've now roped two people in 2 weeks with an unexpected TikTok live, LinkedIn live. We've just been talking about TikTok.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about building a PropTech company. I'm kind of got the grey hairs and been doing this shit for a while. You're a little more fresh-faced with Inspectsy. So maybe should we just kick it off by talking a little bit about, tell us a bit about Inspectsy.
Yeah, sure, man. Well, I've got a couple of greys. I think you can see I'm starting to earn my stripes. But yeah, so we built Inspectsy. For those of you that don't know, it's very new. It's designed to replace physical on-site inspections, right? Basically, the thesis came from my partner, who's a property manager. She does all of these routine inspections. She does like 600 a year or something. It's like, 2 a day.
For residential property management.
Residential property management at this stage, yeah. And basically what we've done, and we thought, well, we had self-checkouts in the supermarket. People are quite accustomed to technology now, and everyone's got a supercomputer in their pocket. So why can't we empower the renter to do the inspection themselves? We've got AI now. So that was a thesis. So we built it, and we have AI that guides the renter through, so they conduct a professional inspection and they check everything. Then it scans for defects, and then it writes the report. So yeah, it allows inspections to be done so much easier for property managers.
So it's good for property managers because they don't have to go to site, and then it's good for the renter because they don't have to have some person they don't know come through their home.
Yeah,
Is
correct.
that the main thing?
Yeah. Well, I went to a pitch night, and we actually won. And one of the questions on the panel was like, "What about the tenant? They're not going to want to do that." And it's actually interesting. I asked the audience. I was like, "What do you guys think?" And they're like, "Oh no, we love it." And that's the thing. That was like the first test before we ever built this thing. It's like, would someone actually do that? But the convenience is much higher than the alternative. It's like, okay, I can do this in my own time. I don't have to have someone come and let my dog out. I don't have to feel like I need to be there when they're there. And I don't have someone rummaging through my stuff when I'm not there.
Yeah.
So the convenience is just so much better.
Yeah. Also, and so tell me, where are you up to with the business, and how long have you been doing it for?
Yeah. So we sort of started this around 11 months ago, I believe. The arduous journey began. And then obviously a bit of a build and then a beta and all that sort of stuff. But now we're actually live in the market. We've got about 15 agencies using it.
Wow.
And,
congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah. And the holidays, it really took off. I think people all of a sudden realized, hang on, how am I going to run my inspection system when I'm on leave? So we found a new unlock. Okay, this now actually lets property managers take a holiday because the system doesn't break when they leave.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so what's been the hardest thing so far?
The hardest thing, it's a really good question. So for us, it's such a change, right? Someone's got their entire way of working that they've been doing their whole life. And then all of a sudden we introduce a new solution, which is great, but it means that they have to change their entire way of working.
Yeah.
Who do we assign to send it to what goes where? So we have to spend a little bit of time with those agencies to figure out how we can implement it into their workflow and sort of change their way of working. So adoption has been probably the hardest part.
And change of behavior specifically.
Change of behavior, yeah. And then setting the right expectations and introducing it. All these things are quite scary. And if it goes in the too hard basket, someone just says no. So we really need to work with the people that are see the massive upside by getting through that little bit of early friction.
When I kind of think about our own journey, I think we had these kind of customers that really got on board early and supported us from the start. Companies we were lucky to get supported by Mirvac and a bunch of these sorts of groups where they kind of got in behind us early in each of the businesses that we've had along the way. And I think those kind of early customers are just such a critical kind of source of both feedback and when people are paying, they're happy to give you the feedback if they're not loving it. And I think one of the things I like about what you've done is you kind of didn't start with or you've kind of now got paying customers and not, because I think the difference between what people are prepared to say looks good versus what they're prepared to pay for can be completely different things. And I think making sure that you're charging relatively early in the process is an awesome way to do things like you are.
Yeah, and it's that willingness to pay, right? That's the word that gets thrown around in the startup land, WP, willingness to pay, W2P or whatever. And it's such an important feature to matching up product market fit, because it's very easy. And I've had lots of what I call product message fit. when someone says that's a great idea, but that doesn't actually mean that there's any market fit. So yeah, you need that willingness to pay to be there.
And so in terms of the types of real estate agencies that have got on board, like are there shared kind of characteristics about those? Because what we found is, for example, we found the larger towers were kind of like a natural fit for the apartments business earlier, and that's kind of where we started. Obviously, had the need to have more leads because the project itself is bigger. They need to make more sales, etc. So we kind of had our sort of initial product market fit was like really well fitted to that. Have you seen any kind of trends in terms of like pattern recognition across the customer base?
Yeah, well, this is actually something that we need to do more work on for sure, and I'll have to ask you about the best way to figure that out, because we're still quite early and we've actually got a different range. We've got some that just are in the inner city and they're just like smashing out apartments, and that seems to be quite a lot of activity. But we've also got one guy in Adelaide who's got, you know, regular house properties and all that sort of jazz, and he's pumping it too. So we haven't seen like anyone that's sort of, it's quite even right now, but we also don't really have enough data. But I would like to look into that more, because my instinct would probably be like apartments, because it's so much. I think there's a fear around how do we make sure that AI captures everything, and there's more complexity to like a big home, like little niche hallways and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like apartments, you've got all of the floor plans for them, so you can put that into the floor plan. There's often not big, there's no external shots that you need to take. It's just all internal and balcony. So I think that probably makes the most sense, just intuitively, but we still don't have strong enough data. But I would say that's probably where it would really fly.
Yeah, I think one of the patterns I've seen for our stuff is like usually doing more of the thing that's already working is the path of least resistance. I think for a lot of people, they're kind of wanting to do more and add more stuff and kind of go across is kind of such a tempting thing. Whereas like if you can kind of like find, especially when you're at the stage you're at, where it's like, how do you go from 0 to 1 to, and then 1 to 5? Usually the 1 to 5, you can either go broad and make your life much harder to go from 5 to 10, or you can kind of like be disciplined around really a narrow scope and pushing it that way.
Yeah, because if you could get like one whole apartment building that's like managed in a certain way, and then they just all run it on Inspectsy, like that would just be probably a huge win.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think for the build to rent operators, I think that's kind of like probably quite a good fit. I think the idea of having it as an apartment where you've got the floor plans, as you said, so you kind of can load that into the AI system. You've got like, you can do one larger deal with a customer. And developers are usually pretty good people to work with in general, in terms of like just the profile.
There's potentially 10K of revenue per month that you've just added if I can execute that.
And so tell me, you're kind of looking for a technical co-founder at the moment. Like, how have you found recruiting and stuff?
Man, that's great. I've got so many questions for you as well, but I'll answer that one, and then I need to pick your brain on something. But so we are looking for a co-founder right now, right? We're sort of building this with an offshore team and with the revenue that we've got, and it's great. We've got this, this product, but in order for us to go to the next level and really build faster and stronger and make sure that we can scale beyond the current, environment that we have, I think that a technical co-founder would be really strong. So yeah, we are looking for one. And in this process, it's been really interesting, right? So I've been sort of, it's like dating. So I call it like founder dating. And it's like sometimes you just meet someone who gives you a referral to someone and you go out for a coffee and you kind of like seeing if there's a click. And that's been interesting. And I've kind of been doing this the whole 11 months I've been on this journey. I think you even sat in one appointment with one guy that we were looking at. And then recently I just decided to put an ad on LinkedIn. I was like, stuff it. I'm going to just advertise for it on like a job.
It's like you can get a free ad, right? So
yeah, you get a free ad. So what have I got to lose? And I put it out there and I had like 49 applicants, and I'm like, holy smokes. And that's been really interesting. So I've been busy with interviews for these people, and there's lots of really great technical talent. But I think that there's also a trend in engineers where they're like, really want to know about the mode and the technology and stuff like that, where I'm really focused on the outcome that we can deliver. So
for the customer, you mean?
For the customer, yeah. To me, like the product is a means to an end, and it only gets better if it delivers a better outcome. It doesn't get better by being more intricate.
Yeah.
But of course, all of the back end and the architecture and the costs, that does matter. So that different viewpoint would be good. But how about you? How do you sort of vet technical talent?
I think it's kind of the same whether it's kind of you're hiring a CFO or any kind of senior executive and I've kind of had good wins and bad things with that. And I think the pattern that has produced the best, most repeatable outcome, a positive outcome for us, has been trying to match the stage of the business with the person, like the person having done this stage of business before, I think is really important. So we've had like a lot of different roles, whether it's kind of finance or technology or like operations and stuff like that. The ones where we kind of, we had a big growth year last year was the biggest year of growth we've had since we started. And I put that down to a couple of things. I look at our executive team, where we've got Craig, who kind of helped Local Agent Finder go from, where we, were and where they were to much bigger. And that was kind of a similar sort of business in terms of the characteristics of it. Yeah. We had Claire come on, who's our chief product officer. She kind of did, ran a lot of the product and engineering function for Kogan at a similar stage to us before they scaled. So trying to find people that have done that stage, because it's so tempting to see people that have got these amazing CVs and they may be like, very like Atlassian's 5,000th engineer. But if those people have primarily worked in these sort of enterprise environments, then they're going to be kind of optimizing for a different set of objectives, and often those things, the amount of the scale that you build into the system changes quite a lot, and it changes the style of approach. So I think like my main recommendation for finding a technical co-founder would be looking for someone that's kind of been from, call it less than 50 customers or whatever, to kind of, or call it less than $1 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue, as opposed to finding someone that's been working at Telstra for 20 years.
Because they've gone through that stretch.
They've gone through the stretch, and I think the difference is with these early stage things is oftentimes you kind of need to write the code knowing that there's going to be limitations in terms of the extendability of it. And we've made this mistake many times where we'll build the code in a way that's really fast and they kind of get stuff out, but they're kind of not thinking through the broader architectural process has really limited our ability to scale that. And I think it was like when Claire came in, our current CPO, and she kind of observed that, saw that what we were doing wrong, and we basically had turned over our entire product and engineering function, and brought in some really talented engineers, and they kind of went back to the start and said, "Cool, well, how are we going to take what we have from now and build it in a scalable way?" And though that pattern recognition for her, having seen a business from our stage to a much bigger business, was kind of the path that what she was able to draw on to design that strategy. Yeah,
gotcha. You sort of started asking a question I was going to ask you, because you have had, like, you showed me, we were out for a walk before, for those that you don't know, we had a little walk, and Mike showed me a graph of like his revenue and his growth and the amount of leads that he's generating, and it's just a hockey stick. And I'm like, oh, I need what's been the cause of that? So obviously a part of it is what you're sort of saying there, but is there anything else? Like,
it's always a slow burn, and it takes way longer than you expect. But I think the main things that why we had a good year last year was, I think the name change for Palmas has been good for us. But I think just in terms of consumer retention and brand recall and stuff, but I think the big one has been the technology change.
Because has that brought like internal costs down and stuff like that, or is that? Or is it just
internal? It's not so much been about costs; it's more about growth. And like leads growth in particular. And when customers go from, I think we're running some analysis today. Actually, maybe something I'm going to share, but I think relative to a year ago, we're delivering, I think it's like 80% more leads per customer than a year ago. So it's like when ultimately the customer, in the same way that you think about it,
can the system handle that pressure?
No, it's more about can they. The degree of personalization that we've got on the platform is completely different to a year ago, and then that has both increased the number of users coming to the signing up to the platform, as well as the number of inquiries each user makes, and so it has this kind of like dual effect where users are up, our signed up users are up, I think 120% year on year.
Value faster.
Yeah, and then every user's making 50% more inquiries, which means all of our customers are getting 50-60% more inquiries than they were for the same price a year ago, and then that obviously increases the number of customers. But again, these things take a long time, and I think getting the technology aspect of it right and building on really good foundations when you need to is such an important part. But I think for you, if I was running the technology side, I would be not worrying too much about building an ultra scalable system.
No, yeah.
I think it's about speed and getting things quickly to market, learning from the customers and just listening and taking the feedback and then translating that into what's probably going to end up needing to be a version 2.
Yes.
But just not waiting 5 years to do it like what I did, which was fucking stupid.
It's like people in the room, right? Like it's like you got a small audience and you only need a small room. But then you also need to make sure that there's some room in case a crowd comes in.
Yeah.
You don't want them like standing outside, but then you don't need the room so big that like the people in the room are like, why are we in this hall? So it's like, but then you also need to build it with walls that can stretch. So,
it's like what do they call it? The big bad wolf where it's like you build it in straw and it works like initially, but then obviously it doesn't continue on. What are some other things you've found challenging about the journey?
So obviously the adoption friction from the customer side. And then I think from like a founder side, from a personal level, it's you always hear this, but like the amount of different context switching and plates that you have to spin, like a little bit of marketing, a little bit of product, a little bit of sales, a little bit of this and that, and like you wear 17 hats, and then that kind of takes quite a tax, and then you can kind of get like lost in what's actually moving the needle of the business forward, and just like. You're like, hang on, I'm one person and I'm already behind these people that I'm trying to catch up to, but I'm running with 17 backpacks on. So it's like how is the thesis and the theory of how a startup can ever win, I think is both challenging and also like really exciting because it's been really hard, but it's also been really fun because you're like you can make decisions so quickly. It's like a battleship takes a year to turn, but I can turn in a week. Or in a day. And it's like, but making sure that you make the right turns and with making decisions on limited information. It's been an experience. It's been challenging for sure.
I think like what I've learned is like just trying to do less things and trying to do a couple of things really, really well. Yeah. I think as organizations scale, you kind of have to have thematic themes for the quarter, themes for the half, and then the initiatives fall underneath the themes. But when you're kind of one person, the kind of temptation is to try to do so many things because the thing you've got is agility. And so kind of how do you like use the strength that you've got of the agility while not getting into the kind of entrepreneur's curse where you try to do too many different things and then you basically end up doing nothing. So I think trying to get finding the discipline between making a small amount of bets, time boxing those kind of bets in terms of, I'm doing this thing, but I want to kind of explore this other thing that's kind of adjacent to it. Time boxing that so you don't end up going like too far down the rabbit hole and, you find yourself 3 months later and you've kind of not done anything. What in the early stages of the first business we created when we first got to Australia, it was like buyabitcoin.com. We had buyabitcoin.com, Faceless Media, which is the worst name of all time, but it was like a influencer marketing platform, and then Social Garden was kind of the third one. And we had an advisor, this guy Dominic Carosa, who was doing some mentoring kind of and helping us. And the first thing he said is like, "You guys are doing fucking way too much stuff. You need to kind of like cut 2 of the 3 and focus on one thing." And we did, and that worked well for us. And so I think for you, it's just about and for founders in general, I think it's just finding what's the bet you're going to make and then going hard on that. If you want to do a little side quest, time box it.
Yeah, exactly. And then like what's the priority and what's going to move the needle? Like sometimes, for instance, like I'll give you an example. Like right now, most of my customer finding is literally just me doing cold outbound, just being scrappy, getting on the phone, literally searching real estate agent near me and then calling up the name and number that I see. And they're like, "How'd you get my number?" I'm like, "It's on your website." Which is like a small hack. And then just like trying to just like pitch. And then like that's been how I've booked all my demos. And then I'm like, okay, cool. So that's working for me and that works for me now. And I know that if I make so many calls, I'll get so many meetings. But then I'm also like, I probably want to try and generate some inbound and do some content creation. But then it's like, okay, so now when I'm doing content creation, I'm not doing the cold calling. And so it's like I might do it. And the content creation doesn't have a guaranteed outcome, but it might be more scalable in the future. So it's like, do I sacrifice a little bit of this or a little bit of that? So you kind of have to do both.
Yeah.
And then those sorts of situations kind of like stack up. And it's just like,
If I was in your shoes right now, I know you used to be an actor on Shortland Street for those in New Zealand that know what that is. But yeah, so I think for you, always trying to play to your strengths is kind of the first thing.
Yeah.
Like I think you're a good salesperson and you're good with the content stuff from your acting background.
Yeah.
I would be like so focused. I think the two big opportunities for startup founders right now, in terms of, particularly if you've got a large addressable market, like it's a little bit different for us because we kind of have 1,000 companies we can work with and we kind of know all of them already. And so it's not about kind of getting meetings as such. It's kind of about creating customer value, which is basically all about are we giving them leads that convert into sales, and basically that's what everyone cares about. Whereas I think for you, if you're kind of targeting property managers, you know, I don't know how many property managers in Australia, like thousands, right?
I think it's like 17,000 or something.
17,000, right? So if it was me, I think when there's a large addressable market, focusing on something that you can scale, which is basically, I reckon, cold email outreach.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And automated outreach.
Yeah.
Plus using a tool like Phantom Buster, which is like a LinkedIn automation tool.
I'll have a look at that.
Which kind of, I've just started using actually and started connecting with people that are engaging with the apartments company page.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I think, so content.
Because there's so many, right?
And then, and cold and the email outreach are kind of like two really good growth channels, I think, for startup founders where there's a relatively large addressable market. And by that, I mean, call it more than 5,000 target customers, I would say is like a large TAM effectively. And particularly when it's fragmented, like the property, because I think the largest property management company is a lot of real estate and they've got like 4% of the market or something.
Yeah, right.
So it's like,
a little bit of LinkedIn outbound, a little bit of email outbound.
I think a lot of email outbound.
A lot of email.
a lot of it. And so I think because you can kind of automate most of the stuff and make it in a personalized and interesting
And it
stuff.
works when you sleep.
And it works when you sleep. And then so you can kind of set that up and run the campaign and do it kind of in sprints. So you maybe do it for a week and try book out your calendar for the following week. And then while at the same time doing the content. Because I think like this content marketing stuff is just so effective.
Correct. And then you can, one good video, one viral video might get you 25 leads.
Yeah.
Which might have taken you like 3 weeks of cold calling.
Exactly. What are some other challenges you've got?
Look, those are like the main ones, right?
What about capital? So what are you doing from a capital point of view?
That's a good question. So capital is an interesting one too, because we don't necessarily have enough revenue to make a profit. We've got like enough to like keep the lights on, which is cool. But I was very fortunate in my former career. I set myself up a little bit. So it's not something you can just like jump into. I sold house and land packages and knockdown rebuilds for like 5 years, and I earned a pretty good salary doing that. So I was able to buy a couple of properties which are positively cash flowed. And that keeps me with the lights on. But other than that, I'm catching the bus.
That found a grind, man.
Yeah. And I've got like a savings account, and I've been burning it for like the last year. So the runway does shrink, and that does put pressure on. But I think it's like a good amount of pressure, because if you're too comfortable, then nothing changes. Yeah. So but yeah, that.
So you say, I guess the thing you haven't said is basically you're raising venture capital. I'm generally a proponent of trying to bootstrap stuff as much as possible. Yeah. The kind of idea of like the seed strapping, where like maybe you raise one small round of funding, but then try to limit it at that. Because I think the discipline required of trying to get profitable quickly is such a good thing, and it just kind of makes you make good decisions. Yes. Because it kind of. You ain't, you don't have the option to burn the money.
That's a really good thing, actually, because I feel like as a startup founder, you've got like a couple of options. Like you can simplify it down to a couple of pathways. One's like bootstrap and be scrappy and like forced to be profitable early. And the other is like raise heaps of capital and then just like hire crazy, and like you're almost not profitable for 5 years. You just like raise, like you have like a Series F, and there's companies out there that are really successful, like Legora. I don't think they're profitable yet, but they're a legal tech company and they've just had their Series D or something, and they just keep raising when they run out of money.
The challenge there is like how many of the companies end up making it into a sustainable company. Like I think the discipline required into the kind of culture of an organization that's running at huge losses and venture funded can create some bad habits that can be hard to shift out of. Yeah. Having said that, obviously lots of companies do very well from raising capital and they kind of do the whole thing. But certainly my experience has been, we haven't raised money on any of our businesses. Yeah. And we used the funding we funded them ourselves through the cash flow of our first business into the second, third, fourth, etc.
Yeah.
But what we did is we took some money off the table on the way through from family offices. So we've had 4 family offices buy small kind of parcels of shares, and those people not only been able to gave us some liquidity, I guess, because we were reinvesting most of our profits into the thing. And thankfully now I think almost all of our businesses are now profitable. So we're able to kind of get that going. But, for a long time there we were reinvesting all of our money. We kind of wanted to, I've got like 2 young kids and a wife and a dog and the stuff. And so I kind of wanted to have like a home and stuff. So same for my business partner, George.
Yeah.
And so that kind of enabled us to do that. And so I think like working directly with these family offices, and there are quite a lot of them in Australia who have either built companies and have had their kind of liquidity moment. Those the people often have great experience as well as being able to, provide you some breathing room. Yeah. So you can kind of keep reinvesting all your money into the business.
Yeah, I think that something we're thinking about for sure. And I'd like to pick your brain on like what you think is the best raising strategy. You've got like angels, or you've got VCs, or you're talking about family offices and stuff. Have you seen like one work better than the other in the past, or what would you sort of recommend?
I think it's kind of it depends on the time and the type of business. Like some companies, if you're going for like a full-on moonshot, hardcore deep science tech thing, you kind of need to raise venture capital.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're building an LLM, this is the extreme version, obviously, but if you're building a foundational LLM, you kind of need a truckload of capital.
Yes.
And then basically you need to go to the VC funds to do that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one way to do it. Then you've kind of got other companies which the way that I like to do it is by starting with more of a service model. So you can kind of go from service into tech and become a bit of a hybrid initially, where you've kind of more service at the start and a little bit of tech, and then over time transitioning into more tech and a little bit of service. And then that kind of, obviously the services business doesn't really scale. It's kind of like the same thing we were talking about earlier with the engineering, where you kind of have, you kind of build the thing that doesn't necessarily scale to where you want to take it to, but it kind of gets you to where you're trying to go much faster, and then you kind of recut it in the same way. So you can kind of start with the service business, then go into and then build technology, and then kind of transition it that way. So that's my preferred way of doing it. And then I think as you kind of go through that process, often all the money that you're making in the service business gets funneled in and lit on fire in the tech business. That was certainly our experience. Yeah, and then that's kind of that can be a good time to take some if you've got kind of enough scale. So call it like if you're doing, 10, ideally 10, 15 million plus in revenue, but maybe say even at 5, I think you're probably at 5 million in revenue, and a hybrid of SaaS and like technology and service revenue. You're kind of in a scope where you could find like a mentor type thing that's had a liquidity event previously that may buy like, 5% of your company. And that's kind of what happened to us. I think we were at about 7 mil in revenue when we had our first family office style investor come on board.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And that was 8 years ago. Yeah, and so there was this guy, David Treworm.
Yeah.
And so he came on board, and that was really helpful. And then we've had other kind of family office, and Wendy Benici is another one, and we've had a bunch of these kind of family office groups come on board at different stages to provide
like a boost ramp.
Yeah, it was not even because they didn't put money into the business; they gave the money to us, so we get to keep the money, which is great. And obviously, that's if you pay dividends, the dividends are taxed at your nominal tax rate. So that might be, if you're earning 200,000 plus, it's 49 cents on the dollar you're paying in tax for every dollar of dividend that comes out of the company. Gotcha. Versus like when you kind of sell some shares in the business. That can be taxed at your capital gains rate, which is 25%. So you pay half as much tax. So what you can do is retain the earnings of the service business to grow the tech business, and then get instead of paying, and the opportunity cost of that is basically not getting dividends. But dividends are taxed at 49 cents, and so what you can do is change the way that you kind of create liquidity for yourself by using the capital account and doing selling equity effectively. But again, you don't want to do too much of that because you get diluted, and it kind of creates other problems.
Yes, that's a deep world, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But what about you, man? Like, what's been the biggest challenge for you? I mean, you've been doing this for much longer than I have. So trying to pick out the individual hardest challenge would be really interesting and maybe challenging because you got to do a deep seek through a long,
it's I reckon the hardest. Yeah, no, I think the hardest thing is kind of maintaining a positive relationship with the business. You know, I think like when you do anything for a long period of time, you kind of go through seasons of your relationship, like in any, like, you know, sometimes it's like, like any friendship or partnership or whatever, it kind of goes through waves. And I've had that same experience with our companies. Like at times I'm like, fuck this, I can't be bothered. Like, you know what I mean? Like not really, but it might last a couple of days if I'm like off it and just like fucking sick of it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then, but most of the time I'm like, I can't wait to get into it. And I'm so excited and frothy to get into the whole thing. But I think trying to like find a way to not make the highs too high and the lows too low, because the symptom of that is kind of this falling in and out of love with the journey. And so I think like if you can kind of maintain, you know, be happy, like don't rob yourself of the happiness when something goes well, but like not kind of beating yourself up too much when it goes poorly. Because that kind of how you end up in these kind of like, you know, really highs and really lows, and and so kind of keeping stable and not highs too high, lows too low, giving yourself the space when you're not loving it. Like I kind of don't really, if I'm like really not loving it, I'm not pushing myself.
Good on you.
Yeah, because I'm just like, I kind of know that I'm going to fall back in love with it soon, and then I'll start getting the itch within a short period of time, and I want to get back into it, and I'll come with a new kind of lease on the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really smart, because even like if you're trying to learn guitar, I know that like if you just sit there and if you forced yourself to try and learn a guitar for 10 hours straight, you would learn way slower than someone that did like an hour a day peacefully. Yeah, like,
and enjoying it. And I think like I think so many people kind of get obsessed with selling like the big exit or all the shit, right? So it's like the journey is the kind of fun part, you know. And I think like so many people forget that. They look, you know, you don't know it's the good old days till you're looking back. And I think like it feels like right now I'm in the good old days in my part of the journey, you know, because it's like we kind of have grinded it out for a bit. We kind of had a lot of growth at the start. Then we kind of were like slow growth, and now we've had a lot of fast growth again. And kind of, you know, not over sensationalizing it when it goes well, and not being too, I'll be so happy when I finally sell the company, or I finally do this thing or that thing. But and like so many of the times, everyone that I've talked to, the friends of mine that have kind of sold their company and had the big liquidity event, of how much of a kind of like non-event it actually is. Wow. And so I think like that's why I'm just trying to like be grateful for every day and enjoy the process as much as I can. And
I always step away from conversations with Mike feeling better, and it's actually so funny. When I was in the car here, I was feeling a bit nervous because I always just, I sometimes I get nervous because I'm like, I don't want to like let him down or something like that. And then my partner said to me, she's like, every time you've come away from a conversation with Mike, you're just glowing, and it's because you're so vulnerable and you're so like real, and it's so it's so rare to see that, and it's great to see that in leaders.
I mean, like,
gives me permission to like feel shit when it feels shit, you know, like
I mean, like, and I've just learned it from other people that have kind of shown me, like guys like our chairman Steve Kloss, and as said, David Trewerne's been a massive influence for us, and Wendy, and we've had Jeremy, who is the co-founder at Finder, recently join our board, and the thing that all those people have is just like a high degree of self-awareness, and you know, they're just honest with themselves and honest with how they feel, and just kind of like going with the flow, not overthinking things.
That's so good, because otherwise you can get in your own way. Totally.
And so what? Any last things? Anything that you kind of need, or if anyone's watching or watches this video later, is there an ask?
100%. So I would just say, like, I've got one question: is if you've obviously been doing this for a while, if you were to pick up apartments again from scratch, but like start again with all your knowledge now, like what would you do differently, and like what would be like the best 3 things someone getting started could do?
Ooh, good question. I think we got the technology a bit wrong from the start. That was a key error, and it kind of takes a long time to get it right. Like there's deciding to make the decision of like going in a different direction, and then there's like the 2 years before actually seeing that stuff translate through. And so I would have done that from the start. Like I think we fucking wasted a lot of time, and we could have just got that much far. I'd say that's the single biggest thing.
Wow. Yeah. So get your house in order.
Get the technology in order from the start. And just, you know, understanding that it's going to take a long time and a lot of capital
Yeah.
to kind of get it right, because it's like, and there's quite a bit of execution risk associated with that. So you kind of want to get started on that process earlier, because we tried to do this several times and fucked it up, but then we kind of did get it right, maybe 2 years ago, but then we didn't really see the gains from it till, a year and a half later.
Yeah. Amazing, man. Well,
That's the thing.
thanks for having me on and giving me so many things to go down and like write notes on. I'm going to look up all this LinkedIn stuff that you said, and the mindset stuff helps so much as well. So appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. Good, keep fucking crushing it. And thanks to everyone that jumped on. We kind of just keep trying new stuff, and appreciate everyone that comes and supports what we're trying to do, and hopefully people find it interesting or helpful.
Yeah, man.
Have a great day.